Yuji's curse technique, what could it be? Is it the rumored soul-swapping technique that we might have had a glimpse from chapters 221 during the trading scene with himself and Kusakabe? Is it the memory-altering technique that we saw with Todo and Chozo, where both of these characters were fighting off against Yuji, but suddenly out of nowhere, they had their memories altered and were then on Yuji's side after the memory-altering happened? These are the big two rumored techniques that us fans really believe will be his techniques, and they both could be his techniques, or it can be that he may not even have a curse technique. Yes, guys, that is a possibility. I doubt that will happen, but it's a possibility. But one thing about this series, ever since the Shibuya incident arc, has got me mad confused. Why hasn't Sukuna used the fire arrow technique, which is not a curse technique that he himself admitted was his to Jogo? When he used it against him, he said to him specifically he will not show his curse technique. And ever since then, we have not seen him use the fire arrow technique. And I think Akutami has done this on purpose. And from what we have seen with Kenjaku and Sukuna, I think there's a simple conclusion here. The fire arrow technique that we saw Sukuna use whilst inside of Yuji's body is in fact a dormant curse technique that Yuji possesses but isn't aware of yet. Sukuna fought against Yorozu and never used any fire techniques. Okay, granted, he did want to test out the 10 Shadows technique against Yorozu, so fair enough with that one. But he then fought against his toughest tester yet, and that was of course Satoru Gojo. Why didn't he use the fire arrow against Gojo? I get the argument that the fire arrow or any fire-related techniques wouldn't work against Gojo, as we saw when Jogo fought against him. But even during the 3-on-1 against Gojo in chapter 235, Sukuna, as a last resort to make sure Gojo doesn't combine reverse curse technique red with curse amplification blue in order to create hollow purple, Sukuna was using piercing blood against Gojo and against reversal red. Are you telling me that piercing blood is the technique to stop reversal red? This was the perfect opportunity to use his fire arrow attack against Gojo, or even at any point before this moment. We saw at one point towards the closing stages of the fight that Gojo was fighting Sukuna, merged Agito and Mahoraga. It was a 3-on-1 which Sukuna was proud of admitting in chapter 233. So while Gojo was fighting both Agito and Mahoraga, why wasn't he using the fire arrow? We have seen the destructive capability of the fire arrow in season 2 of Jujutsu Kaisen, when Sukuna was fighting off against Mahoraga, and when he used the fire arrow, the impact of the hit and recoil almost destroyed the whole of Shibuya. The city became a pitch of darkness after that attack. So are you telling me that piercing blood would be more effective in stopping Gojo's reversal red fusing with amplification blue more than the fire arrow? It didn't make sense for me as I was reading the Gojo vs Sukuna fight. I was hoping at one point during the fight that Sukuna would try and use the fire arrow to penetrate through Gojo's infinity. Now obviously we didn't get that, but your tribal chief was hoping that scene would occur. So the fact, in my opinion, Sukuna didn't use that technique, even though he was so desperate to stop Gojo from using Hollow Purple that he resulted in using Piercing Blood, makes me think that Sukuna can't use that technique because it's not his. It's Yuji's technique, which is ingrained in Yuji's body and soul. Sukuna, as we see now with Megumi, is able to use the 10 Shadows technique whilst he is inside of Megumi's body. Just like how Kenjaku was using Geto's cursed spirit manipulation to control the cursed spirits, Kenjaku also had control of Yuji's mom in a flashback, as we saw in chapter 143, with the same markings on her forehead. Kenjaku then used Yuji's mom's curse technique, which was revealed to us by Kenjaku in chapter 208 when he used Yuji's mom's technique of anti-gravity system to reverse Yuki's black hole attack. So we know Kenjaku not only has the ability to use his host's curse techniques, but also absorb them and carry on using them even if he is inside another person's body. He even used Mahito's idol transfiguration, as we saw in chapter 136, to basically kickstart the Culling Games, and he literally absorbed Mahito moments before. So he obviously has a curse technique to absorb curse techniques, and it's only him, as we know so far, that knows how to do it. From the evidence we have seen so far, only Kenjaku can absorb the curse techniques of his host and carry them on, as well as absorbing curse techniques and using them for his own advantage. Sukuna, from what we have seen, can use his host's curse technique, as we see with Megumi and possibly Yuji with the flame curse technique, but he's not able to use the fire arrow technique whilst he is inside of Megumi's body, which suggests to me that if Sukuna was truly able to do what Kenjaku does and still use his former host's curse techniques, then why didn't he use the fire arrow just like Kenjaku against Gojo? The answer is simple. Sukuna, from what we have seen, can only use the curse technique of the host that he is inhabiting and not carry on the abilities of his former host. Now, Cleave and Dismantle will follow him forever, but Fire Arrow didn't. Now, if Yuji did have the curse technique that allowed him to manipulate fire, like how Sukuna created Fire Arrow, then why haven't we seen Yuji unleash this curse technique yet? Well, I think this goes back to what Sukuna said back in chapter 214. He said, "I get it now. That boy is from that time." He further added by saying, "Kenjaku does the grossest things." So Sukuna saying Yuji is from that time. What does that mean exactly? My guess is that Yuji is potentially a reincarnation. Throughout the Culling Games, we saw so many sorcerers being reincarnated for the Culling Games, so calling Yuji a reincarnation I don't think is much of a stretch. Now, it could be that Yuji is the reincarnation of the Jujutsu sorcerer who was also a fire user, but because he is a reincarnation, he doesn't remember how to use his dormant curse technique. In chapter 230, Sukuna confirmed that curse techniques are ingrained in the brain, specifically in the right prefrontal cortex of the brain. But that user would first have to have used the curse technique in order for it to be embedded in the brain. Logically speaking, Yuji has never used the fire arrow curse technique, so his brain wouldn't register or have any memory of him using it. I believe that curse technique is not stored in Yuji's brain. If we go by the theory that Yuji is a reincarnation of a flame Jujutsu sorcerer, then Yuji's soul will be the one to have that curse technique dormant. Sukuna said that Kenjaku does the grossest things, so could that mean that Jujutsu sorcerer that was reincarnated in Yuji's body, Kenjaku did his meddling by wiping away any memory of a previous life? Kenjaku was inside of Yuji's mom, so some sort of memory manipulation must have been used on Yuji, which is the reason why the reincarnation within Yuji has not awakened his true cursed energy and technique. Add to that, Yuji himself is involved with memory manipulation with Todo and Chozo. That could all be linked back due to Kenjaku messing up with Yuji's real identity. So to summarize, Yuji is a reincarnated Jujutsu sorcerer who specialized in fire curse techniques and energy and was probably the strongest, or at least one of the strongest, in his era. He got reincarnated, but then Kenjaku is somehow aware of this. So he then takes over Yuji's mom's body and makes sure that the reincarnated Jujutsu sorcerer within Yuji never remembers his true origin and power. Which is why Sukuna is able to use the fire arrow technique, because it's a technique that is embedded within Yuji. And Sukuna and Kenjaku are the only ones who can go to another cursed user's body and use their innate techniques. So by the time we see Yuji finally face off against Sukuna, we will hopefully be seeing the return of the fire arrow. Anyway guys, thank you for watching this video. I know this is a crazy theory, but I just wanted to piece together why Sukuna wasn't using the fire arrow technique. The anime really did that technique justice and it defeated Mahoraga. So why wouldn't he be using it in the fights we have seen him have, especially the one against Gojo? So this was your Tribal Chief thinking out loud with you guys, but I want to go over to you guys now. What do you think of this theory of mine? Do you think there's a possibility that this theory can be true and that Yuji is a reincarnation? Comment below and let me know. And if you guys have any theories of your own, please comment down below. I would love to read some of the creative theories that you guys come up. And of course, don't forget to subscribe to the Shaman Tribe.